I am Paul speaking for Free Range with Gail of Gaia. Welcome to today's program, part one of a three-part series featuring Harald Kautz. Harald Kautz's scientific career has involved geology, physics, math, media management, and mass psychology. He's become one of the few surviving polymaths in our rationalized world. In 2012, he entered public awareness with a staggering scientific analysis of chemtrail-related fallout, identifying 3 generations of transhumanistic technologies meant to assimilate our nervous systems. From there, he got involved in medicine, trying to fix the damage done. Most of this damage is still mistaken today as old age and lifestyle disease. Apart from his hardcore scientific approach, he managed to connect the dots to the earliest mythologies, placing our modern drama within the frame of biblical deterioration from paradise, which, according to his research, marks the beginning of the transhumanistic experiment, aiming to transform our species into a sociopathic army of bio-robots. Through focus on his own spirituality, Mr. Kautz has managed to unite spirituality and science without losing himself in contradictions. And now please join Gail and I as we welcome Harald Kautz to Free Range with Gail of Gaia.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. This is Gail of Gaia and Free Range, where we talk and graze on wild ideas and lots of other things as well. Anyway, I'm so happy to have with me today Harald Kautz. He is a scientist from Germany, and he has done a lot of work with chemical analysis of chemtrails and many other things that I hope we get to talk about. So, Harald, say hi.
And, hi. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever it is.
Yeah, because, well, you're out of Germany, so it's later there and it's early here. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because this is fascinating, and I know you did chemtrail analysis. Are you familiar with the nanotech that they've been putting in the chemtrails, from what I've been told anyway, or the food?
I'm quite familiar with self-assembling nanotechnology, self-assembling nanobots. So what they put in the environment are components of self-assembling concepts. This is what shows up in the analysis.
Wow.
To understand how they self-assemble and how they finally fuse with microwave antenna systems to working technologies. This is a completely different part of the game. This is something you find in medicine, not in environmental analysis. It's like having a big mountain of parts that might build up a machine. You need to count the parts and understand how these parts could end up. And then if you look into the human body, you see the fully assembled system, the fully assembled nanobots.
Oh my gosh, you actually can see
how
them?
they work.
You can actually see them in the body?
Yes.
What type of technology are you able to see them with?
There are basically two of 3. We could identify 3 generations. 2 of them are visible. One easily. This is what's known as Morgellons disease. If they
overgrow. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the fibers are visible with plain eye. You don't need even need a microscope. That's one technology, one interface to basically DNA light communication to the biophoton body we carry. And the other one, you need advanced microscopy because it's really tiny. It's basically artificial neuronal knots based on piezo crystals. And
based on what kind of crystals?
Interconnect piezo. Piezo.
Okay, I can't even say it anyway. So
I don't know how you pronounce it exactly.
I can't either. Like, so sorry.
Crystals with very exotic electro-optic properties.
Wow.
And they are interconnecting with a sort of artificial neural network that is barium based instead of copper based like the human one. They interconnect to the human nervous system and just build a technological interface to everything that is going up in the neuronal network.
Wow. Is that why the barium's in there? Is that the purpose of it? For this nanotech stuff?
Partly. If you again go back to the environmental monitoring, you have two different things you find. If you go to chemical analysis, you basically find free barium salts in the nature in an extreme excess, like 100 times more than there should be from nature. And what you find is you find shitloads of those piezo crystals, nano-sized crystals with these electro-optical properties, but they don't show up in the environmental monitoring because they are completely insoluble in acids. So if you make chemical analysis, you don't find them. They don't show up. You need a microscope to see them. So these are kind of two different ways to go into environmental monitoring. And yes, the soluble bioavailable barium is important to replace the copper in the human body, and the piezo crystals are important to build the core of the artificial neural network that is growing. And if we believe the muscle testing, the tests how much of the human in average nervous system is already replaced by this interface technology, we come out at an average of about 2%. So basically 2% of your brain has been exchanged to nanotechnology. That
Holy
is,
smokes.
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, is that involved in mind control?
Yes, it's the interface to read out thoughts and to play in thoughts, mainly thoughts. So this is why it targets the brain, where the mental body is.
So this might be an explanation for some of the people that overreact to certain things, like what they call the Trump derangement syndrome or something like that.
Electrosensitivity. Electrosensitivity is a clear sign of having nervous tissue in the body that is electrosensitive. And this is exactly what happens. Normally, there is a tiny little part of the nervous system that is ferrum-based. So it's also electrosensitive. But this is supposed to be only the last little bit of ending of the nerves when they connect to the natural crystals in the bones. So everywhere where the nervous system is linked into the bone structure, it might attach to nanocrystals in the bones that are actually responsible for certain types of instinctive behavior. For example, when in nature, when animals meet each other, they need to self-organize. When a lion, for example, sees a goat and is hungry, he's sending out a certain signal from his bone structure that hits the prey, and the prey goes into a shock reaction and sends a signal back to the lion that contains the entire information, whether it's healthy or not healthy. And the lion is only supposed to take out unhealthy animals from the herd.
Wow.
So this is kind of the mutual communication is basically working on that subtle, non-local crystal to crystal interaction. But of course, the nervous system needs to read out those bits and pieces of information. So it needs to be connected. And this tiny little end of the nervous system should be ferrum-based to be able to connect to crystal surfaces in that way. And what they did actually, instead of having the bones as the natural communication system that is part of the divine, the nerves end up on technologically created nanocrystals, barium strontium titanate, dotted with europium. This is the precise formula. So you get a secondary input source for what might be called instinctive behavior on one end. But also because this is all over the place in the brain, especially the head is affected, you have such a strong signal that you can read out everything you want to read out from the brain. You just need the software to translate these electromagnetic signals into language, for example, or into decoding pictures. So
Holy
you
smokes!
might even be
How
able
do we short
to read
circuit
out
these things?
imaginations.
Is there a way to short
Um,
circuit these things?
there's a way to get them out of the body again.
That's
This is
that's what I'm getting at.
actually quite easy. You need to know how they assemble, and when you know how they assemble, you can reverse that process by special nutrition and detoxing programs. That's possible.
Okay, well, is it a standard type detoxing or is it a
No.
no?
This is like a biochemical pathway of assembly. If you want to understand it, mercury is stripping the tubulin, the protective layer of the nerve. Then the
I've seen
nerve
that,
itself,
yeah.
the nerve cells get in contact with the interstitial fluids. If they carry pesticides based on organophosphates, the organophosphates chelate the copper out of the nervous system. And then normally a nerve is copper protein prion chain links. And if you remove the copper by chelating it, you get like chain links that are just protein prion. And then they enter the interstitial fluids. And then, of course, if you are old age and you're not in social contact with anyone anymore, there's no need for the brain to fix itself because you don't use it anymore. You just watch telly all day or stare out of the window, so there's no need for brains. Then these protein prion chain links just get deposited anywhere. They get deposited and you get Alzheimer's. If you're still socially active and if you still use your brain properly, then these chain links, of course, try to fix the brain to be used while your immune system and your internal order is trying to fix the brain. But then there's no copper available to grow new neuronal networks. So instead of taking copper, it takes the available barium because it has a similar size as an atom and it has the same electric charge to be pulled into the chemical binding. So then basically you need the barium from geoengineering, the salts, the leftovers from the
Oh, that's
nanoparticle
absolutely
synthesis, and
horrific.
you need the particles by breathing them in and then swallowing whatever comes out of your lung, or by having them in the food chain or wherever you need to get them from. They are in the food chain and you
They are big time in the
definitely have
food
to cut
chain,
them off.
much worse than I
Yeah.
anticipated. I found that out from Ms. Barrington. I wasn't aware that all of the major food companies, anything liquid has been saturated with nanotech. So that's why I was wondering, how do we get rid of this stuff? And we're constantly exposed to it. And I, quite frankly, don't like transhumanism at all and don't want to be ruled or controlled by it. But it's giving me the sense that people that seem to be totally asleep and you can't seem to wake them up, this is probably the core of the problem. They consume a lot of the nanotech and they watch a lot of the TV programs, and it certainly would contribute to their intellectual demise. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but actually it's easy. The first half of the deprogramming or removal of the technologies is detox mercury to fix your nervous system. Step one. Step two is eat bio 24/7, no exceptions. Everything that might contain pesticides, don't eat it.
So organic or grow it yourself.
Grow it yourself or eat organic from a serious organic, not what the supermarket sellers organic.
Yeah,
This is just
that's a problem.
bullshit. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, zero pesticides. If you don't get organophosphates into your system, the copper can't be chelated from your.
Should people be taking copper, do you think? Because there was one.
No, it doesn't work that way.
Okay.
You can't
It won't
fix
help.
the copper problem with taking in copper, the opposite. You just, it's toxic. Eating copper supplements to enable the body to uptake copper, you need to fix other things. You need to fix the mercury problem. You need to fix the zinc problems, because the liver needs proper zinc to be able to process copper in a appropriate way. So it's much more impossible to fix the zinc supply. To be okay on copper. Of course, many areas have a lack of copper in the soils, and if you eat from there, you still might have a hard time to self-supply with enough coppers. But normally, just taking whatever a copper glass and drink a glass of water out of a copper glass a day, or just being aware that you have copper pipes, not plastic pipes in your household, that should be okay for the supply. It's not that we don't have enough. The problem is the chelating of it, mostly. And of course, flights. Whenever you go onto a domestic or international flight, the lubrication oils of the turbines contain organophosphates, and they're never ever, if it's not a brand new airplane, they leak, and then these lubrication oils evaporate into the airstream going around the turbine of the airplane, and from there the cabin air is pulled in, because they use the high pressure in the turbine to keep up the cabin pressure.
Because it does seem
so
like
you get it's like intentional poisoning. When you fly at flight high, you are flying through a layer of nanoparticles. You can see it. If you look out of the window of the airplanes, you are in a gray haze. This is highly concentrated nanoparticles, because they come from the engines. This is where they are generated and produced. And then at the same time, you get the nanophosphates to disassemble your nervous system. And I've seen so many people with, like when these technologies are overgrown, that part goes into Parkinson. And it's like you meet a Parkinson patient and he tries to tell you his lifetime, and you don't even need to listen. I just ask, how many flights did you have in average per month? And they go like, what? How do you know? These are all businessmen flying from Europe to Brazil once a week for their businesses.
Stewardess, or what do they call them? Flight attendants now, and pilots and so on.
Yes, it's a big issue. They fall out like flies, flight attendants.
That's what I heard,
and pilots. And there's a lot of legal stuff going in the background that is not mentioned in the press and by the press. And they are in dire straits. There are certain pilots and personnel on planes, if they have slightly, this is mostly genetically, the disability to detox organophosphates. They are done within 3 years. Complete wrecks. And I know some of those
friend
people.
who was a flight attendant, and she's had numerous health problems. And I'm sure it's related, because
it's only one. It's the Boeing 777, I think, is the only one that takes the cabin air out of a external separated compressor. All other planes have that problem.
Wow. That's horrific. And they probably know about it, but they don't do anything about it, right? And they hope nobody finds out about it.
They do a lot of things about it. They pay bribes, silence people. There's the whole mafia out there to keep the plug onto that bottle. So it's not that they don't know and then they don't do about it. It's that this is intentional. It just needs to be covered up.
Oh, like so many other things. Wow. Now, you had mentioned there are 3 generations of transhumanism
Mhm.
things. Could you explain what else you're referring to? And
Okay, we've
or
got
each
these
generation?
neuronal nanobots connecting to the nervous system to read
Hmm.
out mainly thoughts and nerve activity and play in. It's reversal. You can reverse the signals. This is the first one. Then you've got basically what you need is hollow fibers of a certain size and quantum dot dyes. By now, they distribute all colors of the rainbow. When I started research, it was only blue and red. Basically, blue grid, red grid for the brain activity, the mental body, and the lower emotional body. By now, you even get green quantum dots that are designed to be able to link into heart communication. This goes by
Art?
chakras. If heart, the thing that's
Wow.
pumping the blood. So they by now they try to actually build interfaces to all spiritual centers of the body, to all the chakras. Every chakra has its own color. It's
Hmm.
shining in.
Yeah.
It's the color of the biophotons processed in that area of the body, not processed, but where the main vortex of this type of light goes in. You need to the biophoton body is like a vortex of colored light. This is the blueprint. It's processed by DNA, and the field structure determines exactly how the body assembles. So it's the blueprint of the biology is created by this biophoton field. And everything that we feel and sense is expressed in this structure of light. And the quantum dot dyes do exactly one thing. They absorb light, down convert it into the microwave spectrum, and send it out as a detectable system. And the other way around, if you hit them with a microwave pattern, they upconvert microwave radiation into visible light and emit single photon emissions that are read by the DNA as if it would be internal biophoton processing. So it's a read-write unit for our light body. And all it needs is
Wow.
basically the understanding of how to read the signal. What's always easy is basically to read out signals
Hmm.
under controlled conditions and then play them in again just after being recorded and replayed. You don't need to understand how they work, like a record player. You have music, and the music is scratching a line into the um, record. And if you replay it, you get music again. So if you make somebody angry, record the emission of his light body while he's angry, you can record that emission. And if you reverse the signal and send it out to another human body that has the same technology on board, he will experience anger.
Oh my word. That's
This
how
is how
that
it
that would be
works.
crowd control then, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be a way
Yes,
of.
yes. Yes, till now it was crowd control. With 5G, it's individual again. This is why they build the 5G network, because with 5G, you can basically utilize the grid to target every single individual with exactly the experience you want him to go through.
That's absolutely horrific. um, wow. They have the people that are in charge of all this are people like the Rockefellers. And I think at this point, before we go any further, I'm going to have Paul read the creed that I was talking about, if that's okay with you, Harold. Do you mind?
As you like.
Paul, did you get that message? I'm showing. He told me to do this, so if
Yeah,
okay,
I did. Yes, I got
okay.
that.
Oh, we're waiting on you. Okay.
Well,
I
I'm just sitting here shaking my head with the different things that you've been talking about. The the nanoparticles and how they're actually reading emotions and then broadcasting those emotions back into other people. Um, let's see. I had a thought when you were talking about the how the nano systems are assembled. You remember the Batman movie? When about the time that they had the Batman shooting that happened in Colorado or whatever. Um, uh, a part of that movie was let's see, the Joker. He wanted to kill a bunch of people, so he created this poison called Smiley. And the way it actually worked out was that hair products wouldn't do it alone, but hair products in cooperation or in conjunction with mouthwash and body powder would be toxic and untraceable. Now, this sounds a lot like that was soft disclosure for how they actually intended to assemble this.
Yeah, this is
It's
exactly
coming from different places.
Well,
this is exactly how it's done. And you can't trace responsibilities like that.
Oh yeah, and everybody has
Because
plausible deniability, right?
Yes, because there's always a secondary reason to bring those particles and chemicals into the environment.
Wow.
I have to give these people credit. I mean, they're absolutely genius in the way that they do their diabolical activities and a way of taking
it's easy.
humanity
You need mercury. Down. You need mercury to preserve vaccines, and you need mandatory vaccines to prevent pandemics. And of course, you need organophosphates to keep your engines running. And of course, you need organophosphates to get rid of all the bugs in agriculture. And then, of course, eating organic is a major threat because the milk might turn toxic. And then if you hold your own cow at home, Homeland Security comes and shoots you and your cow. Yeah, this is how the system works. It's fragmented, compartmentalized, and the internal logic behind is not supposed to become visible. You need quite some jigsaw puzzle assembly skills to get through it. And if you do, your life gets exciting enough that you actually don't need to look out for Spider-Man films anymore, because there's no need for extra.
Oh my God, unbelievable. Well, this is intentional and diabolical and
and public.
It's
public. They don't even hide.
Not anymore.
If you in the United States want to know who is doing that check for sensor, spectrum efficiency, national radio surveillance program, sensor. This is how it's called. It's run by DARPA, Homeland Security, and all the other people that have names to call them. And it's using Gemini chips produced by Raytheon for the basic signals, and it's all routed. This is, if you look into 5G, your head of state responsible for frequencies and broadcasting systems,
FCC.
When he, I don't remember his name, but he clearly stated that 5G is a huge market that is 50% civil and 50% military technology and military business, and that this is important for the economy. So what about 5G? 50% of this fucking thing is military. If you don't understand the Gemini stick chip, you don't understand what the military part is. And if you want to understand how this works, look into a sensor. They're doing it officially because it doesn't run on black op money anymore. It runs on straight out government money. And it is about surveillance of your population. Nobody talks about how advanced surveillance is. That although if you want to really understand, it's not about spying. You don't have the reversal possibility of the signals for nothing. What they do, it comes from battlefield monitoring. If you want to understand how this developed, in the very beginning, they were just thinking about protecting the United States from Russian attacks. And attacks would have come over the Atlantic or over the Pacific. So they built up 3D radar monitoring over the oceans. And this was easy because there was so much salt in the air from the seawater that the air was conductive to have these 3D radar technologies functioning. Whenever you come over dry land, salinity goes down and the 3D monitoring didn't work anymore. So they were looking for possibilities to make the air conductive over dry land. This is where the spraying started. And of course, once you make something, you make it as good as possible. So it's not just spraying salt water. It is spraying something that goes up and stays ionizing for 8 months without the need to replace the particles. So this is high-tech, the high-tech that was spread out. Then what they have in the military domain is like, imagine there are 20 Russian airplanes coming in. So the computer observing these planes is exactly knowing where these pilots went to school, what types of maneuvers they are taught to fly. So they basically run a simulation of every single decision making of every single pilot to be able to predict the outcome of a battle. So there are future simulations running 24/7, and then they loop back into the on-time monitoring. So if prediction of the future doesn't match the actual move of the pilot, it's self-questioning the algorithm this pilot is running on and fixing the algorithms so that the computer avatar of the pilot matches his real behavior again.
Holy
so
smokes.
It's a self-learning program having a single unit for every single player that tries to mimic his behavior, understand his background, to be able to predict as precise as possible how he's going to behave in any future situation. And then this is projected into the future. And the US military would behave in a way that makes it most likely to win the battle. So this is kind of a future prediction battlefield forecast system. And this, in the early stages, this was just run for air battles. And the same technology now was adopted for the surveillance of US citizens. Every US citizen has an avatar in what they call the sentient world simulation. He is self-learning. The surveillance of every single American is interconnected with these transhumanistic technologies. So you have a 24/7 read-in. And when the avatar functions exactly like the real human, then it makes sense to reverse the signal if needed. Because then you can fully control the human and he will still believe that he's running on free will. If somebody is not predictable, then you get something that is called TI, targeted individual. Because somebody who is not predictable obviously is still acting out of his immortal divine spirit. This is non-linear. It is non-predictable. And to stop somebody from acting out of his divine nature, all it needs is traumatization. So these people get targeted until they're so traumatized that their behavior becomes predictable. And then the avatar can basically jump over to functioning future prediction algorithms, and the real human becomes playable if needed. And from the whistleblowers in the US, we know that I think 3 years ago, the state of the art was 70% of US population playable.
70%? That explains
70%.
a lot right now. Wow.
Look into the planned riots the planned civil war. Look at the Black Lives Matters and Antifa. This is non-human. This is definitely trauma-based behavior. These girls, when they agitate in politics, they scream as if they just were molested 5 minutes ago. This is trauma-based behavior, and it can be triggered. There's nothing core human in them.
That is absolutely amazing, and I see it. Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think now would
if
be
you
a
still
good.
remember how it feels like to be human, you can see it in all the people. And it's not like far out. Personality, the entire concept of personality is a trauma-based, predictable behavioral aspect that we build when we are traumatized. A healthy human that grew adult is not personality-based. He's based on his human spirit. There's a direct expression from the heart that controls his mind, that controls his emotions, and that controls his behavior. This is natural. If you are taught that being natural doesn't work because your parents already were socially engineered and do all sort of crappy things with you, then you start to create trauma response-based personalities that just basically are an expression of the best way to sneak around the violation of your humanity from outside. If you tell the truth and you're punished for telling the truth, you will develop a personality that is a pathological liar.
That
Just
is so
to
true.
avoid more trauma.
Oh my God. I used to say, how do you expect your children to tell you the truth if you beat the shit out of them because they did?
Yes, yes. This is how it's done. It's slow. It's building up from social engineering, which is the last 25,000 years of heavy work on humanity to get us as traumatized as possible. We already have with this stiff thing in our head, the voice between the eyes. This comes from reading. It's a very old technique. Normal people coming from non-literal cultures, if they become aware of their own voice, it's in the chest. It's based on the heart consciousness. Only if you are, as a child, forced to read and write, the lingual concept gets attached to the eye nerves, and the sound inside the human starts to establish itself in between the eyes, because this is where the eyes are, and the impulse from reading goes in. You see the symbol is transported with the eye nerve into the frontal cortex, and there the symbol is transcoded into voice. So you have a voice in the head. This is non-human. We're not supposed to function like that. We're supposed to have the voice in the heart. Because when it's done here, it's completely based on the mental field, not on the heart consciousness.
Yes. Left
And
side.
on the mental field, which is binary, you can start programming people because it's binary and controllable. This is all a matter of cybernetics, mathematics, field structures. So if you get something like sixth commandment, do not kill, and you understand how it's done with the language programming, the subconscious command given to your brain is kill. And this is programming. At the same time, you have this one layer where it's not okay to kill your neighbor and your family and everybody else. But at the same time, subconsciously, you have all these pressure from the lingual programming subconsciously that is calling to fulfill this picture of killing. That when God says, kill your neighboring tribe, go to Palestine and kill all the Palestinians, this is Bible thing, then the Jewish people went out and killed everybody and didn't even leave a child or a goat alive, because their Lord has told them to release that pressure that had been built up. And this is how the system was basically educating us to think we are good, while all the evil programmed into our minds by commandments was pushing and pressing us to slaughter each other, because this is what it was all about, to get as much slaughter as possible. So there's a long history of social engineering that turned us into this bloody race that has nothing better to do than to torture and kill each other day in and out. This is all programming, lingual programming at the first step. And now they put something on top of it. The language is not enough for them. Now they want to control the entire thing also from the emotional body, where all the other colors come into place. So they even can control that we don't feel shitty anymore if we kill. Yeah. So this is
awful.
Complete takeover. No, it's not awful in a way. It's what we decide for. You can't call something what people decide for. You can't call it awful because it's their free will. Look at them.
But how is it?
Where is
How
it?
can they have free will when all this
With
programming is going on?
Free will. Do you see free will?
No.
This is what people do to themselves, full stop. Nobody forces them to go there. They do it because it's convenient. They do it because it makes them feel comfortable. And don't blame others for that. These dark forces, they only make offers. And if you want to blame somebody, blame those who buy into it, because they have a choice. An offer is an offer. We live in a reality where everything is offered to us. Everything. I have all the option, from robbing banks to becoming a terrorist, to be a tiny little housewife in a male body. I've got all my possibilities and I make my choice. So don't blame people for making offers, because there is no solution. The solution is where the responsibility is, and the responsibility is in every single one. See what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. But there are offers.
I'm sorry, excuse me just a second. The responsibility lies in
Go
the
ahead,
person
Paul.
to educate themselves, to figure out exactly what they're doing by how this stuff is worded. And they have to educate themselves on what words actually mean and phrases actually mean. So the phrase "thou shalt not kill" is interpreted as, no, that's not good. I shouldn't listen to that, because the universe does not understand lack, and nor does my subconscious mind. So the only thing that my subconscious in the universe hears is "thou shalt kill."
Good point. The other thing that I was wondering is, most of these offers that are made, I don't know how this plays in, Harald, but the offers are made without full disclosure. Doesn't that mean anything?
It's not true. We have full disclosure. But the full disclosure is called conspiracy theory. And then the people go like, oh, if I believe to the conspiracy theorist, I might be socially isolated by the neighbor and he might call me a conspiracy theorist, and then I will lose social security in my neighborhood. So I'd better not go there, although I can kind of feel that they are right. And I can kind of feel that the entire government thing is a real shitty, big, evil psyop. And they know it exactly, but they don't name it, not even to themselves, because they prefer not to be questioned by their neighbors. This is full responsibility. Don't take away a single gram of that responsibility, because if you do, you victimize them. And this is leading to nothing.
Wow.
Nobody is a victim here. Nobody. Except of the children in the underground facility to get adrenochrome pumped out of their veins. They didn't have a choice. If somebody wants to know what it feels like to be a victim, have a look at that. But not the citizen.
Would this be a good time to read the Masonian Creed?
Yes, now
Yes,
it's a
go
good time.
ahead.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about all of this deep engineering and planning, and how all of this stuff comes together. Uh, I think it would be a really, really good time to give the viewers the opportunity to see what kind of puzzling minds are behind this. So, and Snopes is all over this. So if Snopes says it's not true, I'm ready to jump all on board with it because Snopes is not a good source. Anyway, the John D. Rockefeller Masonian Creed. We will keep their lives short and their thoughts weak while we pretend to do the opposite. We'll use our knowledge of science and technology in subtle ways so they never see what is happening. We'll use soft metals, aging accelerators, and tranquilizers in food and water and in the air. They will be covered with poisons wherever they turn. The soft metals make them lose their minds. We will promise to find a cure from our many funds, and yet we will give them even more poison. Chemical poisons are absorbed through the skin of idiots who believe that certain hygiene and beauty products presented by great actors and musicians will bring eternal youth to their faces and bodies, and through their thirsty and hungry mouths will destroy their minds and systems of internal organs and reproduction. However, their children will be born disabled and deformed, and we will hide this information. The toxins will be hidden in everything around them, in what they drink, eat, breathe, and wear. We must be ingenious to spread the poisons because they can see far. We teach them that poisons are good with funny pictures and music sounds on TV. Whoever is looking for them will be helpful. We will register them to press our poisons. You will see that our products are used on film and they get used to them and never experience their true effect. When they give birth, we will inject poisons into the blood of their children and convince them that we're helping them. We will start earlier when their minds are young. We will address their children with what children love most, sweet things. You will see that our products are used on film. When their teeth decay, we will fill them with metals that kill their minds and steal their future. When their learning ability is impaired, we will have created drugs that will make them sicker and cause them other diseases, for which we will create more drugs. We will make them docile and weak before us through our power. They will grow depressed, slow, and overweight. And when they come to us for help, we will give them even more poison. We will turn our attention to money and material goods so that they never connect with their inner self. We'll distract them with fornication, external pleasures, and video games so that they are never one with the oneness of all. Their thoughts will be ours, and they will do what we say. If they refuse, we will find ways to implement technology that will change the mind in their lives. We will use fear as our weapon. We will establish their governments and establish resistance in them. We will have both sides. We will always hide our goal, but we will continue our plan. They will do the work for us, and we will prosper from their work. Our families will never, ever mix with theirs. Our blood must be pure because it is. We will make them kill each other if they resist us. We will separate them from unity through dogma and religion. We will control all aspects of their lives and tell them what they think and how. We will guide them in a friendly way and make them believe that they are guiding themselves. We'll instigate hostility among them through our factions. If a light shines among them, we will extinguish it by mockery or death, which suits us best. We will make them tear their hearts apart and kill their own children. We'll achieve this with hatred as our ally, anger as our friend. Hate will blind them completely, and they will never see that we will be their leaders in their conflicts. They will be busy killing each other. They will bathe in their own blood and kill their neighbors as long as we see that they are against us. We will benefit greatly from this because they will not see us, because they cannot see us. We will continue to prosper from their wars and their death. We will repeat this until our ultimate goal is achieved. We will continue to let them live in fear and anger. We will give them images and sounds. We will use all the tools that we have to achieve this. The tools will be made available through their work. We will make them hate themselves and their neighbors. We will always hide the divine truth from them, that we are all one, that we must never know. They must never know that color is an illusion. They must always believe that they are not equal. Come by, come by, come by. They will do so. We will advance our goal. And we will take over their countries, resources, and wealth to exercise control over them. We will make them accept laws that will steal the little freedom they have. We will establish a monetary system that will shut them down forever and keep them and their children in debt. If we band them together, we will accuse them of murder and present the world with a different story, because we will own all the media. We will use the media to control the flow of information and their feelings for us. If they rise up against us, we will crush them like insects, because they are less than that. They will be helpless to do anything about it.
Well, that's about as diabolical as it gets. That's pretty evil.
It stopped to be funny when it came to disconnecting from the divine. Till then, I could kind of laugh.
Yeah.
Because it's, in the Freudian sense, when an inner truth becomes tangible, then your system gets this release laughing. But when it's about disconnecting from the divine, it stops being funny.
Yeah, it definitely stops being funny. And it's truly diabolical. And these beings they're not human. They may look that way, but they're not. You had spoken about, can you tell us anything about black magic, Harold? I mean, how that's utilized as well?
Actually, apart from the little genetic difference that they protect in bloodlines, they are extremely human.
Oh, are they?
Because the concept of evil is restaging trauma.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And this is the divine core that still exists in all levels. Just that from a certain point on, this is kind of, in a way, self-accelerating. If you have traditions of black magic, witchcraft, where self-torture is used to systematically traumatize the body, their own body and the own self, or traumatizing, torturing each other with a goal to create splits, to put the spirit into separate fractions, to achieve all sorts of goals with this, to be able to practice black magic because parts of the souls are hovering in the field instead of being incarnated.
Is that like altars created in the mind from trauma?
Yes, yes. It's systematically used by witchcraft since millennia, and it has been perfectionized by MK Ultra programs CIA run in the 60s. And since then, it's systematically used to create super soldiers. This is witchcraft. It's nothing else. The witches of 1500, whatever, or wherever you look into the history, they all utilize self-torture to modify their spiritual setup.
Wow, I didn't know
because
that.
with this you change things. And in a way, once you went down that path, um, torturing others is actually nothing else than the attempt to find your original trauma by applying it on others. It's known if somebody was molested as a child, he will molest his children because something is buried in his original trauma that makes sure that it is restaged. And then eventually, he as a perpetrator getting into compassion with his victim might have a chance to find the route to go back to his original trauma and make a decision to step out of those cycles. And if nobody steps out, the tradition is just to be given to the next and next and next and next generation. And this is what has been happening in their bloodlines. They are so far out from any structure that could self-heal that they established a stable culture of self-torture that is handed from generation to generation to generation, causing the same havoc on the children, creating the same alien abilities in those children, hyperintelligence, having zero compassion, having zero conscience, having zero hesitations to cause pain and harm. It's just psychopaths, full scale. It's if you torture somebody long enough that only his mental field is left over as a realm of identification for the day consciousness. You have a full-grown psychopath who will find on the lingual level, he will find an excuse for everything he does. If he slices a woman into pieces and distributes the flesh on the bed, he will do it in a Fibonacci order and call himself an artist, because Fibonacci is close to beauty. This is how a psychopath's mind works. And this is how they basically use the planet as their paintboard to call themselves whatever they want to call themselves. On the mental level, this all works. It is coherent logic. If you look on it from outside, it is complete madness. Like a psychopath, obviously, is completely mad. But the internal picture is not like that. The internal picture is coherent. Somebody who is molesting a child, he just feels pleasure. And he thinks because he feels pleasure, what he does is good. This is how it works. So in a way, those people don't need our hatred. What they need is our compassion, because this is the only thing that might give them a hand to step out. Because if we feel them and they read us, this is what's left. If somebody is completely traumatized, he still can read people like a reptile, because this comes from the reptilian brain, which is just working with the mental field. So this is the ability left over to communicate on a more subtle level. They can read and they can override other minds like reptiles, reptilians. Look, the last one that got to your door to sell you a vacuum cleaner, and you couldn't say no. This is the reptilian brain in action. It exactly reads the weakness and overrides your thinking with what you want the other one to think and feel. And
Wow.
this is what they still have. So they are able to pick up on things. And if we confront them with compassion and love, then they might have a chance to step out. It's the only way, except of killing them. Killing them all would be an option. But then we just take their place. because to be able to kill them all, we need to be as psychopathic as they are, or doing it would kill us, would turn us into psychopaths, because of the perpetrator trauma is much worse than the victim trauma. We are all one, like Rockefeller said, on the real level. So if we kill, the entire signature of the deed is written into us as well. And additionally to the suffering and the shame, or instead of the suffering and the shame, we get the guilt if we do kill, if we do manipulate. And this trauma is not that easy to solve. This is why it's so likely that they just repeat it over and over and over and over. So if it needs something, then it's compassion for the perpetrator trauma, compassion for the perpetrators. Because
That
what they
is
do
really
leads nowhere.
that's difficult, especially when you think about the children and what's happening and what they do to the children. So it makes it difficult to hold compassion for them for that reason. But at the same time, I get exactly what you're saying as being the only means of bringing on
It's
positive
practical
change.
reasoning. It's I want a solution. I want the suffering to stop. And if you want the suffering to stop, the only thing you can do is stop creating more suffering and go to the healing points wherever you can access them. It's not everybody's path to basically try to access that level of unity consciousness, but once you are heart-based, you get there after a while. And everything that is duality is actually designed to create war and killing and torture and exactly this. And if you can't solve a problem with a system that created it, never worked, it will never work.
Where does
the thing is,
go ahead.
the thing is that we internally need to step out of the system of duality. And when we got back internally to unity consciousness, where it's natural to be non-judgmental and face everyone with compassion. This is our nature, our true nature. Then everything around us will just dissolve, because this is on a spiritual plane. It's also the way reality is created for every single dreamer among us. We all dream a collective dream, and everything you deny within yourself, you will find in the outside in that dream. And if you see somebody that is doing this black magic power games and the torturing and the manipulation, then we see this in the outside, in the outer world, because we don't admit that we do have the potential in doing so as well. We don't admit that we might have been there in former lifetimes and we didn't face those memories and we didn't clear the perpetrator traumata we carry from former lifetimes. So if you deny that this is part of the options we are given, where everyone has been to a certain extent, then you will project your basically self-hatred and dissociation from yourself. You will project it out and you will find those qualities in the people around you in the outside. And it's a beautiful sign that suddenly all these adrenochrome children pop out of the ground. And this is a sign that humanity has awakened to the possibility to face their own darkness. They were not willing to do that for hundreds of years. This is why the cruelty stayed underground. It's a 100% reflection of the inner worlds into the material plane. They didn't want to see it. They didn't want to believe that it might be true. And what we see today is exactly a mirror of how far humanity is willing to look at their own darkness. There's a little slit open. If you want to know it, you can know it by now, and it becomes visible on the material plane. And I absolutely respect the soldiers that go down there to fight that war. Deep gratitude and respect. But if I go back to my nonlinear thinking of The spiritual system, the ones who made that possible, are the ones who were willing to look into their own darkness. This is where the solution was generated, internally, inside of us. The material plane is just a reflection of the spiritual plane.
So basically, that comes back to the dark night of the soul, as they say it, for each person, to recognize that we've all had probably dark lives at some point in time, and to retain our compassion. And
Yeah, so this is, at least from my experience, this is where I see things becoming fruitful. When people really confront themselves with themselves, go through their shit, go through this incarnation, maybe go through past incarnations, and completely clear their field from subconscious aspects. It starts with cleaning the chakras. This is our now lifetime experience. Healing all the traumata from childhood, and then you can go and start reintegrate the parts of your soul you might have lost in former lifetimes. And all it needs is basically the internal access to your heart chakra to be able to see on that plane.
is that where the gift of empathy comes from? Is the heart chakra? Or where does it come from?
There are many different things that run under the term empathy, so I'm not exactly sure. Definitely the most beautiful form of empathy is coming from the heart, from the place where we are all one, and this is why there is no separation. And if there's no separation, I can see what the other one is when I want to. This is the most pure form of empathy. There are other forms
Compassion.
of empathy that I don't want to
Is compassion
to say
empathy?
that there are. There is another form from empathy that comes from a shared biophoton exchange. If somebody suffers and somebody else comes into the room and has pulled
Sorry.
no big deal. Dogs need to bark. When somebody comes into a room with somebody else who is suffering and he's pulled into his mood, the two of them share a biophoton field. And the one who comes in feels with the other. This is also a form of compassion that might be for a while good if the heart chakra is not open. The risk or the collateral damage happening with this form of compassion is that there is a straight emotion and energy transfer from one to the other. And this is not constructive because healing happens within oneself by oneself. We need our internal healer to heal ourselves. If there's some emotional pressure to do so, like sadness or fear that works as a portal to healing processes. If all these emotions are in us and somebody else comes in and pulls those emotions onto him, they are gone in us. And we don't have the substance for ourselves to put the pressure on ourselves to go through the healing process. So I rather would not interfere with people on that biophoton exchange unless the one is part of my family or my partner. Then this might be in place, in a good place, but not when it's about healing, only when it's about sharing joy or whatever. Then it's good to be open to have this direct energy exchange. But a lot of energetic vampirism is played out in that way. The people run around completely empty of anything, looking for victims, just by displaying pity, sucking the last bit of energy out of them by stealing their emotions. It's quite common that this happens. and it's not fruitful. I'm not judging it because what happens, happens, but I just say for healing, this is not fruitful. It's not a straight path into a solution.
Wow. Well, where does the concept of, I guess that would be loosh, where does that come into play here?
I don't know the term, gloosh?
Loosh, you haven't heard of loosh?
No, no.
Okay, it's low level energy that certain beings feed off of. That's what they talk about anyway. That's what I've heard. But
Do you mean like chronic fatigue as a medical issue, or do you talk about people who are so low energetic that whenever they enter a room, everybody else is leaving?
that more on that order. Like like you can sense the like it's negative energy that is people are projecting and other beings absorb it and feed off of it. Whether that would be the beings that wrote this other or whatever, I don't know. I guess it is somebody that actually enjoys someone else's pain and suffering. I guess that would be a
Okay,
form of illusion.
there are two different things. One is we can talk about lower emotions.
Mm-hmm.
This actually is a matter of color. Anger, pain, it's all in the reddish orange spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Infrared, reddish, orange. So these are the lower emotions, but they can be absolutely in divine order and beautiful. Anger at the correct place, like Jesus in the temple, with the money changers. Beautiful thing, divine anger can be divine anger. The other thing is scientifically spoken low scalar potential, which is the overall amount of energy stored in your light body is low. It makes you basically vibrate on lower frequencies. So everything is whoa, whoa, whoa in you. And still you have the full set of emotions within this lower scalar potential. If somebody with a high scalar potential meets somebody with a lower one, you get some sort of tangent fields. And then it actually depends on the social interaction that develops. Whether the one who has high energy sucks the other one even emptier, or whether the one with low energy manages to regain some life force, some scalar potential from the one that is highly energetic. This is played out in social interaction, and it's an absolutely open game. But it doesn't add a single volt or watt of scalar potential to anyone. It's just stealing from each other.
Oh,
This
okay.
is what
Well,
organizes our entire society. And important to know is that you have two sources of energy. You can breathe prana from the crown chakra through your breathing technique through the head, pump it into your system, and you can open your inner heart chakra, connect through the divine spark we carry in us to the divine, and flood your system with love from the divine, and then you're completely independent of every source. You can recharge at any day of the time as high as you want. And then actually there's no need for social interaction anymore. So it is
interesting.
possible to not be depending on others. And it's a free decision. Everybody can learn to access the energy sources within himself.
So
Just a
it,
little bit of work.
wow. So would you call our light body scalar energy? Would that be correct or not?
Okay, physics.
Not my favorite subject, but anyway, go ahead.
Engineering physics
Mhm.
knows transversal electromagnetic waves. This physics, since 1900 has been reduced to this field understanding in electromagnetics. Maxwell still had it right. He was doing the quaternion calculations from the general field formula that predict that if you have a field, you will always have a transversal field, a longitudinal field, and a scalar field. You can visualize this like with the ocean. Ripples on the surface of the ocean would be transversal waves. This is what physics, school physics, engineering physics is describing. But if you have an earthquake somewhere, you send a pressure wave through the ocean that is not visible. It travels with like 200 kilometers per second, minute, whatever, much faster than a surface wave. And when it comes to a shore, it builds up to a tsunami. Classical physics in electromagnetics would not be able to describe a pressure wave in water, although it's obvious that it exists. This is what engineering physics did with a general understanding. And then you also can, when you actually have the longitudinal wave, which is the pressure wave, say that if you have two longitudinal waves that run against each other, they annihilate each other, they cancel each other out. But what you get is like a little bit of building up of the ocean surface without motion. This is what is happening when you have a hurricane approaching a coastline. Suddenly, water levels of the ocean rise by 8 meters. Or the scientists say that this is the wind pressing the water onto the land. This is complete bullshit.
Really? Wow. Okay.
How can you press 8 meters of water? This is a pressure of 1 bar by sliding over the water. You know, you're just touching the highest millimeter of water. And if the pressure is getting too high, the water is just ripped off and flies somewhere. You don't build up a water column of 8 meters by making to the ocean. It doesn't work that way. You have in the electromagnetics of the hurricane, you build up an extremely highly charged scalar field. With a tornado, physics is still in it. If you want to detect a tornado coming in, you measure the 5 hertz frequency on the electromagnetic spectrum, because this is exactly the turning frequency of the tornado wall with the ionized air emitting exactly this electromagnetic spectrum. If you have the symmetry of a storm and all those single fields annihilating each other, you build up scalar potential, and this changes gravity. Scalar potential is changing gravity. And then if you have an altered gravitational field, the ocean comes up. So if you want to speak about real science and real physics, you need to acknowledge that there are longitudinal waves. This would be, for example, a single photon emission by a DNA. Is a one-shot wavefront of electrical field, basically reappearing as a single biophoton when it's captured by another DNA. This is where we get, and of course, if you have a lot of light going back and forth in the body and it annihilates each other, you build up scalar potential, and the form it finds is the scalar potential eddy. This is what is giving the fractal order to nature. Every plant, every animal, every beauty you see is the expression of a fractal scalar potential vortex. And this is actually why the chakra system looks like twirling tornadoes going in and out of our body.
Yeah. Wow.
If you look at it on the energetic plane. And this is an expression of self-organization of a scalar potential buildup. And this, how big we are, how much energy we accumulated, is felt by other people like how divine is the being, how energetically strong he is, or how low energetic if he's completely empty. People sense that, just realize, wow, there's a sink. If I get too close, I'll be sucked empty. So let's better not get too close to that room. It's been, I have low energetic times in my life. I went on a party because I felt like having some company to recharge my mood. I went into the kitchen, 2 minutes, kitchen empty. I went into the living room, 2 minutes, everybody back in the kitchen, but never in the room where I was. And then I just went home, realized, no, I'm not sociable today. I can't push myself onto people because I'm so low energetic that they don't feel convenient in my vicinity. I've been there. It's a sad
I
state.
think
It
we all
is what
have
it
it.
is.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had somebody to teach me how to recharge myself back then. But there was nobody around, so I just was lost in a way.
Well, that's one of the benefits of getting older. There aren't too many, but one of them is that you learn these things along the way, or you pick up on them and are able to use them to your benefit more. Hello, everyone. This is Gail of Gaia. I'm the founder and producer of Free Range. I do my best to bring you the best in guests and information that's very relevant to you today. I'm making this short little clip today in order to ask you to please contribute to the channel. I'm not monetized by YouTube. I don't sell any products, and I don't have Patreon. So I depend upon your contributions. And I know everyone's having a tough time, but even a small amount from a number of people would help tremendously. So thank you. Please contribute. And again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I do need your help. Thank you.
Thank you for viewing part one of the three